I'm just going to repeat the question in case somebody didn't hear. But he's basically asking, A, what determines the level the soul reaches? Now, let me first kind of make a seder in the process. The soul's garments is one thing. The level the soul gets is a totally different thing. The garments allow the soul to climb to a higher level. So if I'm going into an oven that has 6,000 degrees, I need many layers of some type of a theoretical garment that I can go in and be in that oven. But if I want to go to 8,000 degrees, I need another layer. I want to go to 10,000 degrees, another layer. So the garments is one thing. To kind of explain the point, the whole thing of the garments, the soul has 5 levels. The highest level is called Yechidah. This is a holy part of the soul. It has nothing to do with this world. We don't even have really a connection with our Yechidah. We get this piece of the soul when we really leave the world. Another level of the soul is called Chaya. Chaya is like still a very holy part of the soul. It doesn't penetrate the body. And we also don't really have a connection with the Yechidah, with the Chaya. Then we have the Neshama, Ruach, Nefesh. Neshama is the soul. Maybe a small percentage of it actually goes into the body. Most of it stays up in the heavens. Then you have the Ruach. Ruach is the spirit that enlivens the body. And the Nefesh is the lowest spiritual being that's in your body. Everything in the world has a Nefesh. Even a cup, a styrofoam cup, even a piece of wood, a piece of rock, everything has a Nefesh. Nefesh Chaya is a godly power that enlivens that is, even if it's an inanimate. Now, when a person does a mitzvah, it also depends which mitzvah. There's big mitzvahs, there's small mitzvahs, there's mitzvahs in your thought, there's mitzvahs in your heart, there's mitzvahs with your body. Each mitzvah corresponds to a different level. It's known, for example, that the mitzvahs with your thought, which is mainly studying, or understanding, or grasping, these garments that are done by these types of mitzvahs, they go to a garment, what's called these 2 levels of Gan Eden. Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Tachton. A lower level and a higher level. But it's an infinite, so there's Tachton Elyon, till eternity. So the mitzvahs, the garments that come from the mitzvahs of Machshava, they go to Gan Eden Elyon. The mitzvahs that come from Dibur, from speech, goes to Gan Eden Tachton. The mitzvahs that come from acts actually are garments to the Nefesh. There's different levels. Each mitzvah is a completely different garment. The garment is basically a spiritual tool for the soul to have some type of godly revelation. Now imagine in Gan Eden, in heaven, can't really say heaven because Gan Eden is a different concept, but the godly light shines there. Now imagine, just to compare it, it shines in voltage. So for 100 watts of light, you need a certain amount of garment to receive this godly light. Beyond that, you can't receive anymore. You're not a tool, you're not a vessel to hold this light. In order to get 200 watts of light, you need another garment, another bigger vessel. So the more you increase in mitzvahs, the more you come up there, your bank is full of these mitzvahs, these garments. Your capacity to hold this spiritual knowledge, this spiritual light, is greater. So what determines how much you're going to raise is in this world. That's why this is called Olam HaAsiyah. We know of 4 different types of worlds. The lowest world is Olam HaAsiyah, the world of doing. Because this world is this jewelry store that every minute you got another garment, another garment, another garment. To kind of put the concept in a more of a metaphor, imagine there's a story that there was once a king, and his son got married, and they threw a big wedding. And one person got an invitation in the mail, and one person got an invitation, not in the mail, rather a whole entourage of ministers and generals and everybody, the secondary to the king, everybody came to invite this person. Came the day of the wedding, the guy who got the invitation in the mail got dressed in a beautiful suit, put the invitation in his jacket, and he walks out. The second he walks out of the building, starting pouring rain. And he thinks, how am I going to get now to the bus stop? I'm going to get soaking wet. So he sees the bus coming down, he's like, I'm going to run. The second the bus crosses the crossroad, I'm going to run and I'm going to maybe get a little bit wet. His plan didn't work out, the bus continues going and he runs after the bus and he falls into a puddle, gets completely soaking wet. The bus just drives away. He gets up, he starts running after the bus, falls into another puddle, gets soaking wet. On the way, a gang of robbers come, they rob him, they beat him up, they throw him into another puddle. The guy goes through hell. On the other side of town, the first guy that got the invitation with all the honor, ministers, helicopters in the air, army, soldiers coming to escort and guard him, and they all carry him down. And the secondary to the king puts him in a limo. They're all like treating him like the second to the king. And they're taking him to the wedding. Finally, the other guy reaches the palace, soaking wet. He was robbed, he was mugged, he's full of bruises. He comes to the guards tell him, how can we help you? He tells them, I'm a guest for the wedding. I came to the wedding. So they tell him, can we see your invitation? He pulls his hand into his soaking wet jacket. He pulls a little piece of something. The invitation is so wet, nothing is left from it. So the guards were like, we're sorry, we can't accept it. This is not an invitation. He's like, are you out of your mind? You know what I went through to come to this wedding? Look at me, I'm soaking wet. I got mugged, I was beaten up. You can't even imagine what I had to go through to come to this wedding. Now you're telling me I'm not coming in? You have to let me in. They're like, sorry, we can't let you in. And he tells them, come on, please, have some mercy. I'm starving. I didn't eat all day. Oh, no problem. They take out a plate full of sushi and a bottle of 7-Up, and they tell him, here, eat, please. And he's looking through the gates of the palace. He sees the king sitting in his throne. Next to him is his son, the prince. And right next to him is that other guy that came with all the limos and the entourage. And he tells them, please, let me come in. I'm invited to the wedding. No, you can't come in. So we know that it says, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. All the Jews have place in the world to come. The question is, going to the story, is how you get to the wedding, the journey you have to path to get to the wedding, and when you finally get to the wedding, where are you going to sit? Are you going to sit right next to the king, or are you going to sit outside behind the gates with a little plate of sushi and you're all soaking wet? So the thing is that we all get there. The question is the journey, because when the soul leaves the body, it has to go through a process. It's very painful for the soul to leave the body. It was in the body for 67 years, it's its best friend. The soul gets an impression of the body. It's very hard for the soul to leave the body. You know, many people, when somebody parts from this world, everybody knows, you sit Shiva. Most people, you ask them, why do you sit Shiva? I don't know. That's the tradition. The fact is that when the soul leaves the body, it can't part from the body. It can't part from its life. So the soul is standing next to the grave, next to the body, but he wants to go home. So for 7 days, the soul goes backwards and forth, from the grave to the home, from the grave to the home. That's why we sit Shiva in the house, to greet, so it will feel comfortable. We're here. We're praying for you. The soul has this pain to part from the body. Then comes the Shloshim. The first 30 days, the soul is next to the kever. It's next to the grave. It cannot leave. It doesn't want to leave. It has a strong connection. Then takes a whole year for, we know that the process of the soul getting up there and going through the heavenly judgment takes a year, but a year is for a wicked person, 11 months for a tzaddik. Tzaddik doesn't mean a person who is here, a righteous person. Tzaddik comes from the word tzodek, means that he won the case. After the year, once the soul, the body decomposes, then the nefesh completely leaves, but there's still an impression of the nefesh next to the grave. That's why there's a concept of going to the graves of righteous men, because an impression of the nefesh is still there. But the thing is that the soul has a problem living this world. It's hard for her in the beginning, because it still has a connection to the world. And there's a process what the soul has to go through when it leaves the body. First thing, it has to go through a process that's called chibut hakever. Soul has to get some type of a cleanliness, because it was involved in this world with a lot of earthly things, a lot of mundane things. it pleasured things that it's allowed to. It pleasured food, it pleasured marital relations, it pleasured a lot of things. So it puts this kind of this dust on the soul, and it has to get beaten out. Like in the olden days when I was a little kid, the old ladies used to put the rug on the railing and smack it, and that all the dust will come out. So the soul has to go through something like that. The Gemara explains there's two angels standing, one on each side of the soul, and they kind of beat the soul up. Why? It has to be cleansed in order to ascend to a higher place. You cannot go into a cocktail party with the president with working clothes that are dirty. So the soul wants to ascend, it has to be cleansed up a little bit. Now if the person is very far away from religion, then there's a lot of dirt. So the process is painful. The more you refine yourself in this world, the process is less painful. But the process of ascending and ascending and ascending, it can be a hard process for the soul. That's the journey to the wedding. But once you get there, where you're going to be positioned, that is determined in this world. So a person wants to be next to the king, he needs a lot of these garments. And all types of garments. Some people say, I don't want to fulfill the mitzvahs. I'm fine with studying Torah all my life. I'll study 5 hours a day of Torah. Who studies 5 hours a day of Torah? Who has the pleasure to study 5? Yeah, but I don't want to do any mitzvahs. So he has one type of garment, he's missing the other type. So this is the problem with a lot of people, that they say, no, I'm going to follow this, this, and this, and this, but you have 620 things that you have to do. 620 mitzvahs that you have to follow. Now the Arizal explains that you have to do all 620 mitzvahs in machshava, dibur, and maseh, with thought, speech, and deed. So when we get reincarnated, it's not because we came here to chas v'shalom pay our debts from a different life. Sometimes we get reincarnated because we didn't complete the entire cycle. So a lot of people say, oh, if I got reincarnated, must it be that I have to fix something in this world. That's an option. There's many reasons why we get reincarnated. But one of the main reasons why a soul gets reincarnated, it reaches Shamayim, and they told him, oh, you're missing 17 mitzvahs in thought, 31 mitzvahs in deed, and 51 mitzvahs in talk. You have to go back. You gave another chance. So the thing is that when a person completed everything, then his position where he's sitting around the king is determined how many mitzvahs he grabbed in this world. Now, one cannot say, oh, I'm good with just this amount of mitzvahs and I'm good. Because each mitzvah, each one of the 620 mitzvahs correspond to a power, a koach that the neshama has. So the soul has the koach of riyah, of seeing, that's one. You have the koach of mishush, the koach of the power of smelling. The soul corresponds, the mitzvahs correspond to pieces in the soul. The same way that the 613 mitzvahs, and we know we have 248 positive mitzvahs, they correspond to 248 limbs in the body. So every mitzvah corresponds to a piece of your soul. So if a person says, oh, I'm only doing these mitzvahs, he reaches Shamayim, he's lacking some of the garments. So it's not only the quantity of the garments, imagine you have a full body, you have a beautiful suit, but you have a hole here. And you have a hole here, so it doesn't look good. Now obviously in the spiritual realm, you're missing a piece. So the garments are also pieces that dresses the entire soul. So to kind of sum it up, which is a more longer answer, I'm trying to kind of sum it up. The more mitzvahs you do, the more garments you get. The more garments you get, the more godly revelation you can receive in the world to come. The more you limit yourself with the variety of the mitzvahs, you're lacking certain amounts of garments. So if you would picture a body in heaven, in Gan Eden, that is missing some of the mitzvahs, so it's like seeing a body without a finger and without a hand and without a ear. So this is in a spiritual structure of the body. So each mitzvah corresponds to a piece of the spiritual body, that if you're missing some, the soul has a problem. It might have to come back down again. Now the thing is that we're running out of time, because soon, very, very soon, will be the coming of Mashiach, will be resurrection of the dead. You know, it's like a sand clock. You know, it's dripping. We don't have much time. But the thing is that One, you have to do mitzvahs and all the mitzvahs to make sure that you have a garment for each piece. You don't want to lack even one garment. The more you add garments, the more you have this spiritual capacity to receive this godly revelation in Gan Eden. Obviously, the more you do, the higher level you can reach. Because Gan Eden is this infinite amount of layers. So in order you want to ascend to another level, you need more and more and more. The more mitzvahs you do in this world, every second if you're involved with another mitzvah, another mitzvah, you're enlarging the spiritual vessel that will determine how high you will grow. So obviously one needs to take advantage of this world and every free second, not to think of it like, oh, I can now do this or I can do that. I'll give you an example. One night I was coming from a lecture in Westchester. It was a long lecture. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I went into the car and I was like, okay, I have an hour drive now back home. So what I wanted to do is open the windows, put some music, and relax and get some fresh air. And right away I was like, wait a minute. What am I going to gain from this hour of driving in my car with my head like this, enjoying the music, and fresh air blowing in my face? Nothing. I can now listen to a class on the radio, on my phone, or whatever, and utilize this hour to learn Torah. What is going to be my reward for going like this for an hour, for music that I like, or what's going to be my reward for utilizing this hour and listening to a class online? And today you can listen on your phone, you can listen on a CD, you can, wherever you want, you can find it. So the comparison was like, what am I benefiting? So if a person lives all his life and he says, okay, I have a free moment, what can I do? I can do a mitzvah, I can learn, I can do this. Then you pumping up your nefesh with these garments. And the more you get in this world, this is an investment. Another dollar to the piggy bank. But the thing is that in the spiritual realm, it's hard to fathom what is this garment, what is this mitzvah? There's no words that can say, oh, you know what's this godly revelation? You know what it means to hold for 1 second this godly revelation? There's a story that the souls are sitting in Gan Eden, and there's a special angel that goes into this bank of souls, and he tells them, we need a volunteer to go down to this world to do this and this and this. One can explain it as another way of reincarnating. Now, for the soul to live where it sits in Gan Eden, getting godly revelations 24/7, to go down to this world, first of all, just going down through all the levels of the worlds, it's painful for the soul. Then going through birth, then going through life, then the soul is going to be going through what it has to go through in this world, which in most cases is not so fun. And then it has to die and go back up. So much suffering for the soul, but the souls still fight who will go down. Why? Because they look down to this world and they say, I'm here in Gan Eden right now. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do, I cannot climb here. This is what I achieve, this is where I'm sitting. You want to tell me now I have the opportunity to go down to this world and at least gain one more mitzvah? It means that from here I'm going to go up here. So the souls fight between them and say, I want to go. I'll take all the suffering just to grab one mitzvah in this world. So much more so, 50,000 mitzvahs. So every second you have here, you're dressing your soul with another garment, another garment, another garment. In general, you have to more learn the depth into it, because each mitzvah corresponds to a different part of the soul. There's mitzvahs that are garments to the nefesh. There's a mitzvahs that are garments to the ruach. There's many, it's much more deep than that. More than that, you have to also learn that there's the garments, how they reflect to the soul in the time of the resurrection from the dead. We're going to have souls in the body. So the garments is still, you still have holy garments. But the bottom line, the more you do here, the more you acquire, you're pumping up this spiritual bank and you're enlarging the capacity of how much godly light and godly revelation you can take. And more than that, the most important thing is to remember that you can't have to do everything. You can't be saying, oh, I'm doing only these 3. You literally will be missing certain parts of these garments. It's literally coming into a cocktail party with the president with a beautiful tuxedo without sleeves. It's kind of a bad example, but you don't want to get up there and missing some of the garments. And the garments can only be done with physical mitzvahs. This is the interpreter, the connection.
Is it possible to achieve the 620 mitzvahs?
Yeah.
It is.
First of all, you have to understand that in our generation, 80% of the mitzvahs you can't do, because the mitzvahs have to do with the Holy Temple. You need a king, you need Kohanim. There's half of the, I would say 80% of the mitzvahs you can't do in our generations. Must be that you did it 2,000 years ago in a different reincarnation. Or that you had to come back here and do these mitzvahs b'machshava. That's why there's different, you're supposed to go through, if you learn all the mitzvahs, for example, Maimonides has, an entire set of all the books, all the mitzvahs. He has Sefer HaMitzvot, and then he has, it's all broken down. If you learn the entire thing, doesn't matter if it takes you a year or 10 years, but you did the mitzvahs in your thoughts. So it could be that you did it 2,000 years ago at the time of the Holy Temple. Now you have to come back to do it with your thought. Meaning you have to learn what's called be'iyun, not just reading it. You have to understand what you're learning, but it's, why do we pray now? Because we don't have Holy Temple, we don't have sacrifices, but the sages says, U'shama parim sfateno. We're going, instead of putting bulls on the altar, we'll say it. Our words will be as the same. So the same thing, you can do the mitzvah of whatever that belongs to Eretz Yisrael or the time of the Holy Temple, you do it with your thought. You can do it with your talk, with your speech. You learn the halacha, you learn the concept, you read it out loud, you did it with your mouth. So, could very much be that already 90% you already did in different reincarnations. You just had to come here to finish the rest. Most likely what you need to do in this life is in thought and in speech, because in action you can't do it. Must be that you already did it. So if you want to make sure you're covering the entire 620, then I would suggest you go through the entire books of all the books of Maimonides, because he wrote all the mitzvahs, everything. You can't miss one. If you can learn even more than that, you learn, go through all the Mishnayot, the Shas, whatever you learn, better to learn it speaking. A lot of people just read it, so you're not really yotze with the mitzvah with your mouth. But if you learn it out loud, you said it. If you really understood what you read, then you also did it in your mind, and you basically covered all 620 mitzvot with your mind, with your mouth, 10% with your actions, because you can do it, and the 90% you probably did in a different reincarnation. But you want to be 100% perfect when you go up there. You don't want to miss one thing. And of course, the more you invest here, the more you sit closer to the king. The metaphor is, you sit next to the king, but in the eternal life, you want to sit next to the powerful, godly light. You want to be right next to the king.